Good evening and welcome to the June 10th, 2021 meeting of the Citrus Heights City Council. Earlier, we met in closed session and there is no reportable action. And with that, I'll call the meeting to order. Jeannie, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please join me, please. Arise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
Madam Clerk, would you please call the Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Bruins.
Present.
Councilmember Daniels.
Here.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
Vice Mayor Middleton.
Present.
And Mayor Miller.
Here.
This meeting of the Citrus Heights City Council is cablecast live on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on the Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse cable systems. This meeting is closed captioned and live streamed at citrusheights.net. Tonight's meeting replays on Monday, June 21st at 9 a.m. on Channel 14. The meeting can also be viewed on the City of Citrus Heights' YouTube channel.
Thank you. And is there any changes to the agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
I move approval.
Second.
Motion by Bruins, second by Middleton. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bruins.
Aye.
Councilmember Daniels.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Middleton.
Aye.
And Mayor Miller.
Aye. And with that, we can move on to the next item, please.
So the next item is presentation number 4, Employee Service Recognition.
Okay, well, good evening, Council. This is Chris Boyd, the City Manager. I'm going to go ahead and start us off. As the Council knows, approximately quarterly, we stop, pause, and take time to recognize the tenure and work of our employees. And so I'm going to start tonight with recognizing Catherine Koo, celebrating over 10 years of service. Since joining the city in 2009, Catherine's talents and efforts have helped play a tremendous role in our success, and she continues to be a significant asset to our leadership team to this day. And since joining the city manager's office in 2017, Catherine's taken the lead as the city's strategic plan administrator, legislative liaison, and a variety of oversight for government relations, special projects, innovation, and many, many other things. Her talents and vision and her knowledge have proven to be invaluable in advancing the city and meeting our strategic goals. Trusted with some of the top priorities in the organization, we've been able to count on Catherine and all of them, bringing proficiency, innovation to the city. So prior to her current role as assistant to the city manager, Catherine served in community development, economic development as a management analyst and development specialist, where she most notably led implementation of the Citrus Heights Navigator Program, receiving the prestigious 2017 Helen Putnam Award of Excellence, which was one of the city's finest hours in the category of housing programs and innovations. Her creativity and critical thinking in developing approaches and solutions to the city have gained her respect personally and professionally, in the community and of course amongst the staff. So Catherine, thank you for your leadership and your ongoing commitment to excellence. We appreciate you very much.
Absolutely.
Sorry about that. Next up is Patrick Liu. Brian, are you on?
Certainly, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So Patrick began actually as a temporary in 2000, but he became permanent in March of 2001 as an IT analyst. So this 20 years now gives Patrick lots of institutional knowledge, which we count on every day. Patrick became, he's kind of the go-to guy for a lot of our tasks. So I kind of hate to use the term, he's kind of like a one-man geek squad. So he uses all our hardware specifications for not only for support, but for procurement. And he's also kind of our main phone guy, go-to guy. Some of the things he's done is back in 06, he saved the city a lot of money in changing some of the way the phone system worked and was billed. He was very instrumental in police startup back in 06 also as well. He did a lot to set up the 911 dispatch center. He did a lot of background work in getting that set up, along with the new server room in there, and also setting up the cabling, Wi-Fi, and all the computers and whatnot to get the temporary city hall up and running, as well as getting the new city hall up and running. And so I'd also like to consider his special recognition to go to Patrick, because he's always ready. He's always doing a lot of off-call work, offhand work, especially if like dispatch needs something on the weekend. So he does a lot of extra work to keep things running efficient and smoothly for the city.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, and just a reminder to the council, we typically do a recognition and award ceremony at our annual holiday party, but unfortunately last year and quite possibly this year, we won't be able to do that in person, but employees still receive their awards. So we want to thank everybody for their service, and if council wants to make any comments, we do have Patrick and Catherine Cooley here.
Well, I'd just like to start off and just thank them both. It's such a blessing to have long-term employees, and they've both made such tremendous contributions to the city. I've worked with each of them in different capacities. Patrick's gotten me out of some scrapes with my technology from time to time, and Catherine, just interacting with you has always been a lot of joy, and I just want to appreciate you both very much for your tenure in Citrus Heights and all that you've contributed to our community and to our staff. Thanks a lot.
I just like to say a couple of words here. Patrick, I haven't met you yet, but thank you very much for your service. Although I've had extensive interactions with Catherine Cooley, always a great attitude and just wonderful, super welcoming when I first came out to council. So I just want to congratulate you, Catherine, for a job well done and your continued service. So thank you so much.
I would also like to say a few words. Catherine, your expertise in housing has been really helpful to me in kind of working through some of our local community problems and even at a regional level. So I really appreciate all of the institutional knowledge you have and all the work you've done for the city. And Patrick, as you well know, I am constantly locking myself out of my iPad, email, and even on my cell phone, and you've always been very helpful in taking the time out and being very patient with getting me, back to knowing what my password is and helping me to reset it. So thank you all both for your service.
Just ditto, there are a lot of great employees here in Citrus Heights, but there are some people I think that also just are really, superstars too. And that's not to slight anybody, but some of them we work more directly with and get to see. And the thing about Catherine is that it's incredible knowledge, but it's also just the ability to really have what we need when we need it. And so I appreciate you tremendously, very much so. And the thing about Patrick is that I'm kind of technology ignorant, and so every now and then I've had to make a call. And the thing about Patrick is he's never made me feel stupid, is the way I'll put it. And so I appreciate that tremendously, and all the help that he's given to me over the years too. So thank you to both of you.
Catherine, Patrick, it's truly been a pleasure working with both of you, and I look forward to working with you for years to come. And so thank you so much for your service. And I don't know if either one of you want to say a few words, but you're welcome to at this point. No
I'll
speak.
just say
There we go.
thank you so much. It means so much to me to know that our work is making a difference in the community, and it's been my pleasure.
Thanks, Catherine.
valuable.
I want to say thank you also. It's been great working here. It's a lot of interesting things, keeps me on my toes, and appreciate everyone that I can work with.
Thank you, Patrick, and you've been a big help. Haven't had to call you in a while, but again, when I first started getting set up, Patrick was a big help. Well, great. If that's it, we can move on to the next item.
The next item is presentation number 5, presentation by Republic Services on their annual update and scholarship awards.
Hello, Republic Services.
Hello, good evening, Mayor Miller, Vice Mayor Middleton, and council members. For those of you who I have not had the pleasure to meet in person quite yet, I am Anna Rulon, Municipal Manager at Republic Services. I have had a few roles at Republic over the years, all of which have included working with Citrus Heights on various programs. In my current role, I manage the contract that we hold with your city and with your residents. I would like to introduce two of my colleagues who will be presenting to you this evening about all things solid waste and scholarships. The first is Anthony Smith, who's the Citrus Heights Recycling Coordinator, and he handles most of the education and outreach programs that revolve around recycling and waste. And then the second is Ashley Skirty, who is our brand new Municipal Administrator. Before I pass it over to Anthony, I would just like to thank the city for another wonderful year as your solid waste provider. 2020 clearly brought many challenges to a lot of people, including the waste industry. And 2022 will bring a lot of new adventures, especially considering all of the upcoming organic waste legislation. So I will be available at the end if you guys have any questions, but for now I will pass it over to Anthony.
Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you, and thank you, Anna, for the introduction. So yeah, I'll go ahead and pretty much be giving a recap of what happened in 2020, everything that has gone down since the last time we presented at council, as well as a couple of snapshots here and there of what's going on in 2020. All right, so first, kind of the most obvious one, COVID-19. That led to a big shift in how we operated in 2020. So some of the things that I wanted to highlight right off the bat, impacts, things that we saw from the pandemic. Number one being higher residential waste volumes. We saw that almost across the board in our cities and in Citrus Heights as well. Where, you know, of course, people not being able to go out, not having events and being able to get out quite so much. We saw waste start to pile up a little bit in residences. And then the second one as well, fewer in-person events. The way we interacted with our customers and residents, you know, changed dramatically in 2020. So fewer in-person events and a little bit higher residential waste were two of the big impacts that we saw in 2020. As far as safety goes, a lot of these things are still in place today. Our office employees have been working from home almost exclusively since March. We are allowed to go in the office, but we do maintain social distancing, gloves, mask, hand sanitizer, everything like that is provided, as well as obviously meeting via Zoom and Microsoft Teams and such. One thing I did want to point out, though, with this safety bullet is that our frontline employees didn't take any days off. Our drivers, you know, and our mechanics and things like that, everybody really had to rally to get through this pandemic. And obviously it's still ongoing, but really trying to keep our employees safe, keep our residents safe. So definitely wanted to put a spotlight on our frontline employees who didn't get to take time off or aren't able to work from home. For working, you know, so hard throughout this pandemic. And then the last thing here, events, of course, what we did have and what we were able to do, things like our compost events and kind of modify those a little bit, but where we were able to interact, we did have masks being worn and social distancing enforced there as well. But hopefully now, you know, we're starting to get the vaccination rate up. We're hoping that our in-person events are going to start to open back up and we'll really be able to get things going in the city of Citrus Heights. Next slide here, I'm not going to go over this in entirety since it's quite a bit, but this is our residential services package. So this is going to be a lot of things that you're familiar with, the services we provide. Some of those being, of course, our curbside collection service, the 3 bulky waste cleanups per year that we do, as well as things like the Christmas tree light recycling, holiday light recycling, and even down to our customer service guide that we put out on an annual basis. Other things, 2020 outreach and education. We run our annual Citrus Heights poster contest with our schools, but with the pandemic, we modified that a little bit and opened it up to all residents in Citrus Heights. We changed it to a picture contest where we encouraged residents to submit photos participating in the community or partaking in sustainability efforts and things like that. And the winning submissions were even featured in our 2021 customer guide, as you can see a couple snapshots here. Moving forward, I talked a little bit earlier about our compost bin events and our compost workshops. We were able to offer 2 in 2020. They're free for Citrus Heights residents located at the Sylvan Ranch Community Garden. So thank you so much to them for hosting and being a great site for us to have these workshops and events. And at these events, participants receive a free compost bin provided by the city, along with some tips on how to get started and things like that for any prospective composters or anybody that's looking to get started with sustainability. For 2021, though, we are hoping to get 1 more on the books. We had 1 in March. We're on the schedule for 1 at the end of June. And then in September or October, that's when we're hoping to be able to have our full in-person compost workshops where we can have a full class with an instructor. These next couple slides are going to be about the materials that we collected in 2020. So you'll see here our trash, illegal dumping, and bulky items. The one thing that I wanted to point out here is that the bulky item, that number, that tonnage there is just 20% of everything that we collected that went to a landfill. You'll see here on this next slide is where everything is diverted or recycled. So you'll see the other 80% there on the right corner of the bulky items, along with other services, like I mentioned, our recycling, our green waste, batteries, used oil and oil filters, and even more than that. So kind of to wrap this up here, through our curbside services, our campaigns, our drop-off events and education, and of course, our collaboration with the City of Citrus Heights, we were able to blow past our contractual minimum of 40% diversion rate. So that means we were more than 7% above what we were expecting, hitting that minimal rate. So even with this pandemic, and I mentioned the increased waste, we were still able to meet that rate and blow right past it. So thank you so much to the city, city council, and everybody for your continued support. And I will go ahead and pass this off to Ashley for our sustainability scholarships.
Welcome, Ashley.
Hi there. Before we jump into the scholarships, I just want to say I'm really looking forward to getting to meet everyone at the council. Since I am just stepping into this position, I wanted to make sure that you guys got a face to match with the name. I'm sure you guys will be seeing more of me as I'm going to be helping oversee the contracts for Citrus Heights with Anna. All right, so let's get into the exciting part, the scholarships. We are going to be highlighting our 3 scholarship winners. Every year, Republic Services gives out 3 scholarships. They're $1,000 each to our graduating seniors who are Citrus Heights residents, and our winners are students who are pursuing some sort of degree in sustainability or a degree that will end up benefiting the environment. Our first scholarship winner is Shanikram Putsum, and she is a San Juan High School graduate, and she is going to be attending Sacramento State. We are so proud of you, Shanikram Putsum, and thank you for applying, and we're excited to see what you do in the future. Our second scholarship winner is going to be Juan Castro Asensio, and he is a graduate of the Mesa Verde High School. He is going to be also attending Sacramento State. Juan, we're so proud of you, and we are excited to see your growth and your success in the future. Finally, our third scholarship winner is Paola Lopez. She is also a graduate of Mesa Verde High School, and she will be attending American River College. Again, Paola, we're really excited to see how your degree is going to end up benefiting the sustainability of our Earth. Okay, I think that's it for our presentation. Again, thank you so much and congratulations to our graduating seniors. We're really excited, all of us at Republic Services, to watch you grow, and we are excited to see what your future holds for you. We are here for questions. If any of the council members have any questions or clarification they have for us, Anna, Anthony, and myself are here for you.
Thank you, Ashley, and congratulations to our scholarship winners. That's quite an achievement. I wish we could have you here in person, maybe someday soon, to celebrate that fact. And are there questions from council?
Just want to say thank you for putting this program on, and I know it means a lot to the students that have received the awards, so thank you.
Yes, and thank you. You know, you talk about essential workers, to have the garbage picked up every week. It's just amazing and didn't miss a beat. So I want to thank all your employees for the effort they put forth during the shutdown. And also kudos to our residents for diverting almost half of our waste to recycling, 47.5%. That's great. And again, thank you to Anna, Anthony, and Ashley for your presentation. The 3 A's, AAA.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we can move on to the next item.
Our next item is presentation number 6, Cal Recycle presentation on SB 1383, mandatory organics recycling. And Mary Poole with the General Services Department will introduce the item.
Thank you, Amy. Great segue, that last presentation, into this item. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Mary Poole with the General Services Department. I'd like to introduce this item and the speakers. As you know, the city is working diligently to plan for and implement requirements for the state's mandatory organic waste reduction regulations. And so as a follow-up to the January study session that we presented to the council overall of what is sort of in store for the city and the region, and in advance of the upcoming study session in July, where we'll be asking the council for direction on our residential organics recycling options, staff thought it would be helpful to have Cal Recycle provide an overview of the SB 1383 or organics recycling program requirements. So we asked Cal Recycle if they could do a presentation for us, similar to what they've been doing for other jurisdictions. So with that brief introduction, I would like to let you know that we have Kara Morgan, who is the branch chief for the Cal Recycle's local assistance and market development. And then Robert Carlson, who's the supervisor for the unit that includes the Sacramento region, and he is the senior environmental scientist. So with that, I will turn it over to Kara and Robert to take us through the presentation.
Thank you so much, Mary. I appreciate that. I'll be giving the presentation, and let me see if I can share my screen. All right, are you guys seeing the presentation screen? Excellent. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you so much for inviting us to present today on SB 1383. This presentation provides a very high-level overview of the requirements for compliance with 1383. SB 1383 addresses the high amounts of organic material in our waste streams and its impact on climate change, as well as the large population of Californians that are food insecure. Organic waste comprises half of California's waste stream, and food waste comprises 13% of the state's disposed waste. SB 1383 passed in 2016 as part of California's larger strategy to combat climate change. The law was designed to reduce global warming superpollutants like methane, which is up to 84 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Landfills are one of the largest producers of methane in the state. As we know, when organic material breaks down in the landfill, methane is generated. So we need to move away from landfilling organic waste like food,
paper, and yard waste. SB 1383 is a statewide target that requires California to reduce organic waste disposal by 75% and increase edible food recovery by 20% by 2025. Organic waste is defined broadly in the regs and includes food waste, paper, cardboard, green waste, organic textiles and carpets, lumber, wood, biosolids, digestate, manure, and sludges. CalRecycle has been collaborating with jurisdictions and other stakeholders over the past 3.5 years to complete the regulations that are final as of November 3rd, 2020. While the regulations take effect in 2022, jurisdictions have to plan now so they can be in compliance by January 1st, 2022. There are many benefits if we successfully implement California's super pollutant reduction strategy. These include environmental benefits such as fighting climate change, improved air quality, and less landfilled waste, providing millions of meals to Californians without enough to eat, and creating thousands of new green jobs. Here are some key implementation dates throughout the rulemaking process. The most important dates to note are that the regulations become enforceable January 1st, 2022. This means that starting on January 1st, 2022, jurisdictions must have their programs in place, and CalRecycle can begin enforcement actions on jurisdictions and other entities. In 2024, jurisdictions will be required to take enforcement action against non-compliant entities. This slide provides a brief overview of the program requirements that jurisdictions will be required to adequately staff and resource. We will cover briefly some of these requirements in the next few slides. Jurisdictions will be required to provide organic waste collection services to all residents and businesses. This is what we refer to as automatically providing service or universal service. The resident or business is automatically provided the service rather than subscribing to it. The regulations standardize container colors across the state to be fully implemented by January 1st, 2036, and require a jurisdiction to place a label on each new container or lid provided to generators starting January 1st, 2022. Jurisdictions can issue 3 types of waivers to generators: the de minimis, physical space, and collection frequency. The regulations also place requirements on residents and commercial businesses. Jurisdictions must conduct annual education and outreach to all generators. This includes information on methods for the prevention of organic waste generation, recycling organic waste on site, and sending organic waste to community composting. This also includes information regarding programs for the donation of edible food. Jurisdictions must also procure certain levels of recovered organic waste products, such as compost, renewable gas, or electricity from biomass conversion. Each jurisdiction will have a minimum procurement target that is linked to its population. There are requirements to purchase recycled content paper and paper products if the price and performance is comparable. CalRecycle will notify jurisdictions of their target prior to January 1st, 2022. Each jurisdiction must plan for adequate capacity for recycling organic waste and edible food recovery. Each county will lead this effort by coordinating with cities, special districts that provide solid waste collection services, and regional agencies located within the county. Jurisdictions must monitor compliance and conduct enforcement. Monitoring begins in 2022. Jurisdictions must do annual compliance review of commercial businesses to make sure they have service. There are contamination monitoring requirements of the contents of the containers. To reduce reporting, jurisdictions are required to maintain records and keep information in an implementation record. Each jurisdiction is required to report to the department annually on its implementation and compliance with the requirements of 1383. Requirements include adopting an ordinance or enforceable mechanism consistent with the regulatory requirements by January 1st, 2022. SB 1383 extends beyond directing waste management and recycling operations and staff. This slide shows that every department within local government will be affected and have a role to play. Each department will need to understand how SB 1383 impacts their work. And jurisdictions should be thinking and planning for the staffing they will need, whether they will task their direct service providers to staff some activities, and whether they will contract with other entities, such as environmental health inspectors or consultants. Jurisdictions are responsible to implement edible food recovery programs in their communities. This includes providing education and outreach, assessing capacity of existing edible food recovery, and expanding existing infrastructure if necessary, conducting inspections of Tier 1 commercial edible food generators and food recovery organizations and services beginning 2022, and inspections of Tier 2 commercial edible food generators beginning January 1st, 2024. SB 1383 related inspections of food recovery organizations and food recovery services will be limited to verifying that the record-keeping requirements have been met. Inspections should be at a level or rate to adequately determine compliance with the requirements. Annual inspections of each Tier 1 and Tier 2 commercial edible food generator is not required. Beginning in 2024, jurisdictions must take enforcement action on commercial edible food generators that are out of compliance with the edible food recovery requirements. By January 1st, 2022, jurisdictions are required to have an enforcement mechanism or ordinance in place. Between January 2022 and December 2023, jurisdictions need to identify businesses in violation of the regulatory requirements and provide educational material to those generators. Beginning January 2024, jurisdictions must take progressive enforcement action against organic waste generators that are not in compliance. The progressive approach allows for notification to the generator and provides time for the generator to comply before penalties are required to be issued by the jurisdiction. CalRecycle sets a maximum time frame that a jurisdiction has to issue a notice of violation and issue penalties to a generator. The jurisdiction has the flexibility to develop its own enforcement processes within these parameters. An early, robust education program will minimize the amount of enforcement action needed. Also, if the jurisdiction is automatically providing service to its residents and commercial businesses, this further minimizes the need for enforcement actions. In the case of entities such as public universities, school districts, federal facilities which are exempt from local solid waste oversight, CalRecycle will be directly responsible for ensuring compliance. However, jurisdictions are required to provide education and outreach to these entities. CalRecycle will be evaluating a jurisdiction's compliance, for example, by verifying that all organic waste generators have service, jurisdictions are providing education, jurisdictions are issuing notices of violation within the correct timeline. CalRecycle will be establishing a process for conducting jurisdiction audits. The timeline and process will be different than how it is done now. Much of a jurisdiction's existing programs will be integrated into this audit process, so you will not have separate review. SB 1383 is a statewide target and not a jurisdiction organic waste diversion target. Unlike with AB 939, SB 1383 prohibits a jurisdiction target. Due to this structure, the regulations require a more prescriptive approach and establishes state minimum standards. Jurisdictions will have to demonstrate compliance with each of the prescriptive standards rather than determination of a good faith effort. Under the regulations, if CalRecycle determines a jurisdiction is violating one or more of the requirements, CalRecycle will provide compliance assistance such as checklists, model tools, and training. Although CalRecycle may begin penalty enforcement on regulated entities starting January 1st, 2022, the timelines for the enforcement process are not triggered until CalRecycle issues a notice of violation. Once CalRecycle determines enforcement actions or penalties are necessary, CalRecycle will implement the process outlined in SB 1383. CalRecycle is helping jurisdictions in a number of ways, including the recently released 4 model tools. These include a model franchise agreement, a model mandatory organics disposal reduction ordinance, a model organic waste product procurement policy, and a model edible food recovery agreement. The R3 Local Jurisdiction Services Rate Study, which provides guidance on setting organics recycling rates, was made available to jurisdictions in early March. Recently published tools also include a best management practices guidance document for identifying Tier 1 and Tier 2 commercial edible food generators. In early 2021, we released the procurement calculator tool and held an accompanying webinar to help jurisdictions plan and track procurement activities. We have many other tools that have been released or are scheduled to be released soon. We will soon be publishing organic waste and edible food recovery calculator tools to help with the capacity planning requirements, along with a webinar to cover this guidance. We'll also be releasing a survey tool that jurisdictions can use to gather information from food recovery organizations and services about their capacity. To help jurisdictions with maintaining records on site, we are developing a model implementation record-keeping tool. We're developing a tool for best management practices for conducting route reviews, developing a series of training videos to support further developing understanding of the regulation requirements, and later this year, we'll be releasing department-issued waiver forms for jurisdictions that will apply for a waiver. Later this year, we will have a new technology review process and application associated with Article 2 of the regulations. And CalRecycle is working with the contractor on the data research for the statewide education campaign. The focus is using community social-based marketing to drive changes in behavior. And in late 2021, we expect to start releasing many tools and training for jurisdictions. And if there are any other tools that you need, please let us know. The City of Citrus Heights is on its way to implementing a program that will meet SB 1383 regulations. We'd like to acknowledge the city for working on the following efforts in preparing for 2022. The city has already passed an ordinance that includes the requirements and enforcement of SB 1383. The city, haulers, and Chamber of Commerce has already begun conducting outreach to businesses at recent chamber meetings. Amending of the franchise agreements to include requirements on providing garbage and recycling and organics, and beginning mandatory cart rollout to all non-compliant covered generators under the previous legislations of AB 341 and AB 1826. That's the end of my presentation. Thanks so much for your time. I'd like to open up to questions. I believe Kara is here to help answer them.
Questions from council? Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I really appreciate it. You started out by saying that the goal of this program is to reduce the generation of methane gas from landfills. Whether we have it in landfills or whether we have it in a separate pile, I'm not quite sure I understand how the reduction of greenhouse gases, or methane, is it captured? Is it controlled? There's a certain amount of breakdown that's going to happen with the organic materials. So my question is, what kind of reduction can we expect from going through all these measures? I guess organic material is going to break down no matter how you look at it. So if you could just answer my question as far as what kind of reduction do we expect that this is going to achieve?
Sure. Thank you so much for that question. It's a really great question. So I'd have to circle back to actual significant amount of methane that is anticipated to be reduced as a result of implementation of these regulations, but it is millions and millions of tons. And the key point is, much of this material, when it goes through, for example, an anaerobic digester, the methane is captured and turned into new product. So it's turned into electricity or fuel, renewable natural gas, for example, heating and other applications. It goes to a composting facility. Composting facilities are designed to also capture any type of gases that are emitted. So through the scientific measurements analysis, it's significantly less. And we've recently had some studies by NASA. They've been looking across the state of California to determine where methane is being emitted. And in California, our landfills are the third largest generator of methane emissions. So it's something that if we're not putting it into the landfill, putting it elsewhere into these technologies that can turn it into new products that have tremendous benefits. That's the object of this new regulation. I hope that answers the question, and we can circle back with Mary with the actual tonnage figures.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you get this question all the time. I've did a digester down in Manteca for their garbage fleet, and there's no payback on it. It's very, very expensive. Again, you do get some new product out of it. How are we going to pay for this? We're struggling just to keep our police force employed, and I can't see where we'd be able to afford this other than, I guess from the presentation, we'd be raising rates to cover this cost. I mean, they're huge. The payback on a digester is over 50 years. So I'm not sure with this, by 2022, if we're going to be able to afford to keep up with you. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and you're right. I do get that question quite often, and I really appreciate that question. So the legislature and the governor is very much aware of the significant challenge that this new regulation places on cities and counties. As such, currently proposed in the governor's budget is upwards of $135 million in new grant funding to expand and help pay for that infrastructure. So that helps reduce the cost. Many of our AD projects have utilized grant funds to help reduce that cost. That's one way. Additionally, the Senate currently in the budget is proposing additional, I believe it's $200 million for direct grant funding to cities and counties to help also reduce these costs. So I encourage you to reach out to your legislative representatives if you're interested. And I would assume you are in this potential funding to provide your support, because this will help reduce the burden on increased rates.
Thank you. Brett?
Yeah, that was going to be one of my 2 points too on the funding side. It's a state mandate, and my position would be that we're not going to do it at all. We're not going to do anything regarding it unless it's paid for by the state. And so the mayor's correct. We don't have the funds to do that, and the requirement is that the state fund those things that they push onto us. And so I'm firmly behind that we don't do anything with this if the funds don't come from the state. The other thing I'd want to, and I don't know who this will go to, I don't know if it's Mary or one of the other two, but when I hear, excuse me, terms like edible food generators, food recovery agreements, and edible waste, I just cringe, and I don't know where this is going to go, and it just concerns me tremendously, just the optics of it all, and so I don't know what we're going to do with that, but can you give me a better idea of what that means?
Sure. Thank you so much for both questions. First, regarding the unfunded mandate, the legislature did put into the statute that it is not funded, and it would be funded through local rates. So again, I think, reaching out to your legislative representatives is so very important. On the second point, I think, so what we're talking about is donatable food. So we're talking about large generators like supermarkets, for example, that take food that's still edible and hasn't passed the due date. They just weren't able to sell it. That can be recovered and provided to people in need. This is growing into an incredibly successful program to meet the tremendous food insecurity that we have in California. As a result of the pandemic, it's become even worse. So this is an opportunity to for those large food donors, and that's what the target of this regulation is, for them to recover that donatable food that can be recovered, utilized by food recovery organizations, and provided to folks that are in need. So I hope that helps answer the question. I know this terminology, edible, et cetera, that's what we're talking about. It's really food that's still safe to be donated to folks that are in need.
So are you saying this won't push down into restaurants and stuff like that, who at the end of the night have made too much product or whatever, and they're going to be required to find a source to pass it to?
Yeah, thank you. For some restaurants that meet the threshold size, we're talking about large restaurants, they will be subject to the regulation. Small restaurants that are under the threshold will not. So the regulation was set up with a lot of stakeholder engagement with, restaurants, supermarkets, food recovery organizations to develop thresholds that made sense, going after larger generators that have more readily recoverable donatable food.
And so then obviously they'll have to find a way to pay for that process too, which means they'll be passing that on to their customers, which means their customers will pay more for their food so that other food can be pushed a different direction. It's just another example of, as we continue to push cost onto businesses, restaurants, and stuff like that, as to why we see companies fleeing California. It's just another one of those things. Just add it to the list of pushing cost onto consumers. That's it.
Okay, well, again, thank you for your presentation. I think the idea behind everything is great. We just have no idea how we're going to pay for it. And with that,
Print money? What do you think?
print money, we can't do that. So, with that, we'll move on. Clerk Van.
Our next item is comments by council members and regional board updates.
All right. Mr. Schaefer, what have you been up to?
Well, I've been on vacation for the last 2 weeks, so I
Nice.
haven't been up to very much. Trying to stay in touch, so I really don't have much to report.
Those are the best reports. Mr. Daniels.
Thank you. No regional board update, but did have the pleasure to attend the Bella Vista graduating senior parade that it was held up at Sunrise Mall. They asked me to kick it off, and I was just honored to do that. It was a great showing, even though Bella Vista is just outside of Citrus Heights. I was extremely pleased that they decided to come to our mall and put on their parade. So really nice show. We are getting closer and closer to the somewhat kind of sort of reopening of California, June 15th. A lot of businesses are open, a lot of places are open. I see a lot of other councils or entities doing in-person stuff. So I was just wondering if tonight, and if not tonight, maybe soon, that the city manager could give us an update on reopening City Hall, the council chambers, and definitely the police lobby. So again, tonight if possible, but if not, hopefully something soon that we can get an update on when we might be doing that.
All right, Ms. Bruins.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to report that it was wonderful to get together with the community on Memorial Day for our annual Memorial Day service held by the American Legion and Sylvan Cemetery. It always warms my heart every year when I see families come out with their kids for this service as well as Veterans Day. We had our police department there, the procession. We had Harmony Express. They come every year and sing. And our mayor gave a very touching presentation. So I just want to say that it was nice to, after a year of not meeting, to be meeting in person again on Memorial Day. Regional SAN did not meet this. We're not meeting again until July. But we had a situation that was brought to my attention by one of our citizens recently, and that is that as the Sacramento Area Sanitary District does the regular maintenance of their pipes, which is an ongoing program we've been doing many, many years to keep our pipes clean and flowing, that this year there seems to be an infestation throughout the region of cockroaches. And so what happens, apparently they find sewer pipes to be a very favorable habitat to live in, and as these manhole covers come off and our pipes are clean, they sometimes escape into the community. And so the regional SAN has put out a couple of documents, flyers, pieces of information that I've passed on to our city manager and will be up on our website on what to do if your neighborhood sees the presence of cockroaches. I don't think anybody wants to deal with that, but they do have a program in place to remediate them and numbers to call. So look at our website and you'll be able to get that information. And they are very responsive. I got really good feedback today from our resident that they're out there today. They've got a fogging program scheduled to take care of it. And so let them know if you have that need. The other thing I'd like to report is that we had a PAL meeting earlier, and well, actually yesterday, and we are so excited that we're going to be able to start offering in-person programs for our kids again through our Police Activities League. And we're going to start it off with a barbecue and a day on the lake, kayaking, things of that nature, and a lot of other activities. We continue to reach out to grow our participants, so all kids are welcome. You can sign up at the PAL website, which is linked through the city's website as well. So thank you to Lieutenant Chris Fry and the team that puts that together. They do a fabulous job, and so we're looking forward to having a more normalized activity season come this summer. That's it.
Vice Mayor Middleton.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have lots of updates. The Sacramento Area Council of Governments Policy Innovation Committee met, and we had a presentation given by Valley Vision about the challenges and importance of expanding our broadband coverage in the Sacramento region. The pandemic obviously has exposed the deficit in our current system, and when it comes to work, health, school, and entertainment, as a region, we're working on solutions to close that digital divide. I also attended the Racial Equity and Inclusion Working Group with the same organization. It consists of 10 board members and 10 public members, and it's continuing the work that's happened last year to discuss racial equity, inclusion, and public policy as it relates to housing, transportation, and economic development in our region. And so we're working on a work plan to figure out how can we best serve all of our residents throughout the region. And Cal Cities, the Housing, Community, and Economic Development Committee discussed taking a position on several housing bills and also a constitutional amendment, ACA 7, which covers local governments and land use zoning. It's a potential amendment to restore some of the local land use control powers back to local cities, but it has a long way to go in terms of language and is too vague at the moment. So I'm working to sit on the committee to kind of flesh that out because I would like to see our communities have more control over land use and development. Locally, the Citrus Heights Chamber had their Best of Citrus Heights event, and it was a huge success. Our police department and city attorney's office won in their respective categories, and I want to congratulate all the winners of these awards. It just shows how much work you've put into the community and what value you provide to us. It was nice to see community members and the chamber members engaging in normal events with some modifications. I'm also working with the city staff and Sutter Health to host a clinic, vaccine clinic in Citrus Heights. I want to thank the resident who emailed me and brought it to my attention that Citrus Heights hasn't had a clinic recently and that our numbers are low when it comes to the vaccination rate. Our first clinic is actually scheduled for June 26th, and more details will be provided very soon. And finally, I would like to recognize that June is Pride Month for those in our community who identify as LGBTQ+. And I want to say that I support the community's efforts to raise awareness of the issues and struggles members of our community face. That's all.
Thank you. Well, I was on vacation too, so my report's really short. I did want to add on to what Jeannie said about Memorial Day. Post 637 of the American Legion and the Sylvan Cemetery District just do a bang-up job every year. The Avenue of Flags, if you haven't been to Memorial Day or Veterans Day with this group at Sylvan Cemetery, you need to. It's very respectful and a good way to say thank you to all our servicemen and women for their service. And with that, let's move on to the next item.
The next item is public comment, and members of the public may address the council on any item of interest to the public and within the council's purview, or on any agenda item before or during the council's consideration of the item. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. If you wish to address the council during the Zoom meeting, please use the raise hand function or *9 from a telephone to indicate your desire to speak. When your name is called, the city clerk will allow you to unmute your microphone to speak. And I do have one written comment that was received tonight that I will go ahead and read first and then see if we have any raised hands.
Thank you.
This public comment is from Edixon Martinez, and he states, "I am writing to ask for help removing palm tree debris from the front of our home in Citrus Heights, California. I received a notice to abate. Palm tree with dead palm fronds needs to be trimmed and properly maintained the first week of May. I called Officer O'Connor. I got scared as the letter stated that if I was still in violation of the notice during a reinspection after May 4th, I could be fined up to $420. I am unemployed and live with my wife, Claudia, my 80-year-old mother, and my daughter, Natalia, 13. I explained to Officer Casey O'Connor my unemployment situation and asked for help for families in need, anything that can help since we could not afford to pay for such service. Her answer was, no, keep me updated in 2 weeks. I found a Craigslist company to cut the palm for the same price to clean it, $700. We used our depleted emergency family fund. We hope the Sac County or the city of Citrus Heights could help us to dispose of the palm tree cut stumps and palm branches. I spoke with Deborah, I believe it's Nathan, Supervisor, Code Enforcement, Mary Poole, Citrus Heights Operations Manager, and even several supervisors of the Republic Services, and none of them have been able to help me find a solution yet. The letter stated the reason for this notice was because the city received a complaint and an inspector has confirmed the violation.
Could, Chris Boyd, are you there? Could you look into it and report back to us? Let's take care of this, please.
Yes, Mayor, it's already being handled. The chief and his staff are on top of it.
Okay, thank you.
It looks like I do have one raised hand. Transformando, if you could, you can now unmute yourself and speak for 3 minutes.
Yes. My name is Felixo Martinez. I'm the person that just sent that letter. And no, the people in the city, they're not taking care of it. I just received a phone call letting me know that this Republic Service can do it for almost $400. My point is that I cannot afford to do this. My point is that I don't understand how the city or some of the representatives in the city can ask for residents like me in the midst of this pandemic to clean a palm tree. I end up having to cut the tree because it's the same price as cleaning it, and now we inherit a new issue, which is not being able to get rid of this palm. Most recycled places will not accept this palm tree, and my concern is that someone stumble or have an accident with this palm in front of my house while I try to figure it out, how can I afford to get rid of this palm tree? The biggest issues are the stumps. They're cut and they are there. They were too heavy even to transport on a normal pickup or anything like that. So I cannot even do that myself. So what I'm asking is, number one, is for these agencies to talk to each other before they ask residents to do this kind of things at a time like this, and to put something in place that actually really help us. And then, like me, I assure you there's other families going through the same thing. I don't feel the need that I have to start talking to people and gather people so we can get a real response. But this is not something that I'm going to allow anyone just to brush off with a phone call or a just pay $400 and get rid of your own problem. That's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And again, I have your contact information. I'll be in touch with you tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor, can I bring up one thing real quick? I believe the rest of us all got a similar email from a different person.
But this is not on the agenda, so we really can't discuss it.
No, we're not discussing. I just want to
Okay,
make a comment about
just want to
this
make sure.
issue.
I
Yeah.
didn't want you to go off.
No. My point is this. I'm a little curious as to the city's authority to go around and tell somebody that they have to trim their tree, and especially a palm tree, because it's certainly probably not going to encroach on somebody else's property normally. So I'd like to just get something back myself then that shows me this authority of our code enforcement going around and handing out these notifications that people are going to be fined if they don't trim their palm tree. The other gentleman I'm talking about had to do the same thing. He couldn't afford it, so he had to just cut it down. It was a perfectly healthy tree. He had to just cut it down. So I'd just like to see something back because obviously it's not a one-time thing.
Okay, are there any other comment?
I do not see any other raised hands at this time.
Okay, without any raised hands, later on, if you have a comment about a regular calendar item, we certainly can accommodate you. But we will close the public comment and move on to consent calendar.
So next we have consent calendar items 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12.
I move consent.
I second.
Motion by Bruins, second by Schaefer. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bruins.
Aye.
Councilmember Daniels.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Middleton.
Aye.
And Mayor Miller.
Aye.
So the next item is regular calendar, item number 13. The subject is resolution of intention to record delinquent solid waste service charges on the tax roll. The recommendation is to adopt a resolution of intention to record delinquent solid waste charges, penalties, and interest on the tax roll.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Mary Poole with General Services again. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Can you all see the PowerPoint? Yes?
Yep.
Thank you.
What PowerPoint? I'm just kidding.
So the item before you tonight is the resolution of intent to record delinquent residential garbage and recycling charges on the tax roll. This is an action that the city takes on an annual basis to assist Republic Services in collecting past due charges associated with the residential garbage and recycling collection services franchise agreement. So tonight, it's staff recommending that the council adopt the resolution of intent and set the public hearing for July 8th. Let me advance this. The city derives its authority for this action through the government code and the city's municipal code, which provide the authority for the city to record the delinquent charges, penalties, and interest on the tax roll. And it also provides that a public hearing is to be held in order to hear objections to the proposed action, to the amount of charges, or to both. As of May 15th, there are 1,063 delinquent accounts in our approximately 26,000 accounts that we have for residential services. There's a past due balance of 354,000 and some change. Penalties, 35,473, and a little over 390,000 that is due to Republic Services altogether. So the next steps of this process include scheduling the public hearing for July 8th, which would be tonight's action. Once that is done, the city will publish the notice of the public hearing. Republic will mail notices out to the account holders about the public hearing and how they can either pay off their amount that is due, or they can attend the public hearing to object as they see fit. The city would hold the public hearing on July 8th. There would be a final reconciliation with Republic in August, at which point the city then submits the final numbers to the county to be placed on the tax roll. And then the county forwards the payments in January and May of 2022. So just to conclude, the staff recommendation is to adopt the resolution of the city council's intention to record the delinquent solid waste charges, penalties, and interests on the tax roll and set the public hearing for July 8th, 2021. And then if there's any questions.
Thank you, Mary. Are any questions?
So as Mary said, this is something that we do every year, and typically between the now and the time it actually goes to action, a lot of people pay. So I would move that we adopt the resolution of the city council's intent to record delinquent solid waste charges, penalties, and interest on the tax roll, and to set the public hearing for July 8th, 2021.
I second.
Motion by Bruin, second by Schaefer. Ms. Van, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Bruins?
Aye.
Councilmember Daniels?
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Middleton?
Aye.
And Mayor Miller.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pohl.
The next item is regular calendar item number 14. The subject is possible support of upcoming Regional Sacramento Abandoned Vehicle Service Authority ballot measure. The recommendation is to have the City Council provide direction regarding possible financial support for a ballot measure, and then the city will share its intent with the Sacramento Transportation Authority Board of Directors.
Welcome, Commander.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council,
that's the
Commander
chief.
Turcott. Commander Turcott's going to be giving this presentation, and this one's a little bit complex. It's a regional request that we need to respond back to. It's not something the police department's advocating one way or the other. And so we had the opportunity to schedule one-on-ones with individual council members to explain the complexity of this. And I just want to thank Commander Turcott. He has worked very hard at working with the other jurisdictions and the Transportation Authority to put a very complex topic into a very understandable presentation. And so I want to thank him for his leadership and his presentation tonight. Commander?
Thank you, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Like Chief introduced, Alex Turcott, I'm the commander for our Special Services Division here at the Police Department. Also joining us virtually is Special Program Manager Jennifer Dahl with the Sacramento Transit Authority, and she'll be able to answer any more technical questions you may have about SAVZA or the ballot measure. All right, just a brief overview. So SAVZA, or the Sacramento County Abandoned Vehicle Authority, is our local vehicle abatement authority. It was established in 1992. This provides funds to assist jurisdictions throughout our region with vehicle abatement, both on public property and private property. The funds are generated by a $1 fee that are added to vehicle registrations for anybody that lives within the jurisdiction. This fee is scheduled to sunset April of 2022. Under Prop 26, this fee is now considered a tax and would require a ballot measure at a supermajority of 2/3 support of voters to reinstate. The Sacramento Transit Authority, or STA, is planning to place this on the ballot for 2022 at an estimated cost of $1.5 million. For Citrus Heights, the impact, generally, Citrus Heights receives somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000 in SAVZA funds annually. The revenue is used to offset costs that we incur with our vehicle abatement program. To support the ballot measure, if the city was going to enter into support, would be about $62,000. And if the ballot is passed by voters, our SAVZA funding would begin again in fiscal year 23-24. And that measure of $62,000 for our share of the ballot measure assumes that all the current agencies that participate in the ballot measure all current agencies do participate in the ballot measure. There we go. This is an overview. So basically, the way the funds are distributed are along the lines of population per jurisdiction and claims that are submitted for abatement. That same algorithm is used to determine our share of a ballot measure. And so you can see it kind of lines up along the lines here of Citrus Heights is about 4% of both the cost of a ballot measure and the funding that we would receive. So with that, staff is requesting direction from council as to whether the city should support a regional SAVZA ballot initiative, and we would forward that information to STA for further consideration. And as I said before, I have Program Manager Jennifer Dahl with STA if you have any further questions or any questions of me.
Questions? Vice Mayor?
I'll wait.
Okay.
Just a clarification. So obviously it says we receive $1 for each vehicle registered in Citrus Heights. And then I'm kind of amazed then, well, here's where I need the clarification, is that we spend, or we get about $50,000 to $60,000 back. So does that mean that, what I need to understand is how many vehicles are we registering in Citrus Heights? How much of this, how many dollars are coming in? And is it higher than the 50 to 60,000 that we're spending or getting as a benefit to being in the program?
Yeah, so Ms. Dahl might be able to help me out here, but the dollar registration is for any vehicle within Sacramento County. So those fees go into the overall vehicle authority, which is SAVZA, and then they distribute the funds based on that algorithm of population and abatement costs.
So do we know how many vehicles are registered in Citrus Heights? How much did residents contribute to this fund is what I'm getting at.
No, I don't have that data, sir, but I can try to find that for you.
And then on the amount that we received as a benefit or whatever, the 50 to 60,000, was that limited in any way, or was that just the amount that we happened to say that we used to abate these vehicles? Were we restricted at all or in any way?
Well, most of the money is by population size, and then a portion of the money is by the amount of abatements that we put in. So depending on how many vehicles are abated, we actually report out to SAVZA quarterly, and then the funds are dispersed along that formula.
So, okay, sorry. Are you done? Okay. So from what Brett's question was and your response, Commander, it sounds as though the amount of vehicles that we have in Citrus Heights really is irrelevant to the formula. It's based on population, not cars or vehicles.
For the disbursement of the monies, that's correct.
Right, okay. Also, based on the dates that you offered, there's going to be a gap, as I understand it, of 1 year between the sunset and the implementation of a new legislation if it passes. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
If there is no ballot measure, we would stop seeing that funding next fiscal year. If there is a ballot measure that's successful, it would take another 12 months for the funding to be reinstated through DMV and for us to start receiving monies.
Okay, so if we were to support the ballot measure, then our Citrus Heights' cost would actually be, in essence, double the amount we're being asked to put in, because we're going to have to fund it ourselves for at least a year anyway. Is that also correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right. That's my only question at this point.
Tim?
Yeah, I've got just a clarifying point. So if we invest $62,000 into this campaign to, into the movement to generate this funds, we're over the 10-year period, we'll get about, well, we got to skip 1 year. So 9 years at $50,000, that's about $450,000. So we're investing $62,000 over the next 10 years, we get $450,000 back. Is there something flawed in that logic?
Other than I would have to scratch out the math to confirm the numbers, but it sounds correct, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll offer a quick comment. So I noticed you said that it's $62,000 minimum if all jurisdictions participate. So if anyone doesn't, then our costs would obviously increase, and we wouldn't know that until we get, closer to putting it on the ballot. And also, there is the whole idea that it has to have a supermajority to pass. And if it doesn't, then we're putting $62,000 on the line to possibly get nothing in return. A supermajority passing here locally recently hasn't been very successful. So I don't really know if that's a wise investment on our part.
And I guess one of the questions, I'll get back to you. The $1.5 million, is that just the cost to put it on the ballot, or does that include any kind of consultant fee to quote unquote educate the public on the issue, or is that separate?
It does include the minimum consultation fee, but I know Ms. Dahl would have a better grasp of those numbers for you. think she's here with us.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute.
Yeah.
Hello, Mayor and Council.
Hi.
The estimated cost that we, which is actually the last fee schedule, which was the last primary and election costs, is about 1.2. That's the very base minimum. And then the rest is kind of, we're trying to get a more detailed breakdown on outreach and polling. The 1.2 is a pretty standard cost, and then the difference is what we kind of just was a buffer until we can get more definite numbers on outreach and polling. I did speak to County Elections Office today, and and specifically the campaigns manager, so she is going to work to see, because we're not technically a county or agency, and we're not technically a special district, so she's looking in to see more of to dial down those costs for us. And get a better grasp of that. And of course, as soon as I get that information, not only would I share that with the STA board, which is concurrent with the SASBA board, but I would also send it to all the members as well.
Thank you, Jennifer. Brett, you had another question?
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I support this concept. I think this is a good idea. $1 a vehicle on your registration is fine. What I don't understand, or what I don't know yet, is how much money did Citrus Heights residents pay into this? And we know what we got out of it. Now, I would be surprised if there's more than 50 to 60,000 vehicles registered in Citrus Heights. I would be really surprised, but I might just end up getting surprised. So, and then if we're not getting back as much as we're putting into it, I don't want to subsidize Sacramento in towing their cars. And so there may be something to look at in regards to a Folsom Rancho Cordova, Elk Grove, Citrus Heights type of system. But I think I'll be okay with the number. I just don't know the number of what we're putting into it. I want to make sure that what we're putting into it, we're able to get out of it, and if there was any restriction, because obviously we're seeing more and more and more abandoned vehicles with the homeless population. And so this program is a very important program right now, and probably even needs to be enhanced in some way, but I just want to make sure that we're getting our biggest bang for our buck.
Commander, what's our annual cost overall for abandoned vehicles, not just what the SAFSA pays for?
I don't have a complete cost breakdown, but I can tell you that we use the SAVSA funds to support about 20% of labor costs for the code enforcement officers that administer our program and do the reporting out for SAVSA and monitor our abatements. So that can give some of an idea.
Well, but that, I don't know, does the SAFSA cover all our abatements?
No.
No, I
that's
didn't. That's what I was looking for, was what the actual costs, not just of SAFSA abatements with code enforcement, but all of them.
So what is included in our costs for abatement besides code enforcement costs? Is it?
So there would be tow fees associated with that, whether or not the registered owner comes to get them. Some areas, things like mobile RVs are quite expensive to abate, and some other items there. So there's a per vehicle breakdown of the labor time for abatement. And in the case of private property abatements, you also have the code enforcement abatement processes and services and inspection warrants, whatever might be associated with getting those vehicles out of the public view.
So the total cost for abating vehicles is substantially more than the $60,000 that we get from SAVSA, or from.
Yeah.
That's what I was driving at, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. My next question is then, this comes out of the police budget, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. If we did not participate in this because there's no assurance that this is going to pass, what would be, in an overall sense, based on the police budget, $60,000, could that be absorbed pretty painlessly, or would that be painful?
No, that's something that, I mean, any funding is obviously going to be helpful, but
Right.
we are already taking steps to mitigate that impact because either way, we would have to do that next year as it
Right.
happens. So we already have a plan in place to maintain our program without the SABSA funding.
Okay, so our program's going to go forward regardless of whether we get the SAVSA funding or not.
Yeah, abatement services are very important to our community, so it's something we would continue to do regardless.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Any motions? Are you looking for direction? I didn't see if it was an action item or not.
Yeah, so what we're looking for is just direction to indicate back to STA our level of commitment to participate in the ballot measure. And if we do commit to participate, they can give us back what our actual hard cost will be once all the jurisdictions have answered. If we don't agree to participate, then they'll factor that in for the remaining members for what their share will be.
Okay.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Tim.
So here's the council member, Vice Mayor Middleton made a very good point. I seriously doubt that this will pass at a 2/3 vote. So I wouldn't, my direction would be not to support this measure.
I concur.
Brett?
Well, geez, I'm the anti-tax guy, so, but I don't know. I think you can sell the public on this, that the issue of $1, which they've already paid. There's no surprise here. It's just replacing the process. That with the definite increase of visual blight from abandoned vehicles, and knowing that their tax dollars one way or another getting these vehicles removed, but this is just one of the tools that we have available to us to help with that cost. But when it comes time to make our decision, if we make a further decision or formal decision, I do want to see us have some information regarding how much are our residents putting into the program.
That's reasonable.
I'm inclined not to move forward just with the fact that we're going to have to do this for a year without funding anyway. If we can make it and it's not going to be painful, it's just not something that I'm willing to support, especially if it's not making our project whole here.
Well, as our former mayor Slowey said, I can count, so I'm not even going to weigh in.
Oh, come on.
It's, again, it's $1's not that much, but I tend to side with our vice mayor here as far as the 2/3 vote. A lot of pushback on taxes. And I also want to see what the other jurisdictions say. So right now, I think it's, our direction is not to
Stay on the sidelines?
stay on the sidelines. Yeah, good way to put it. And we'll bring it back when we know more information. Is this going to be discussed at the next STA meeting, Jennifer?
Yes, I will be giving them an update and giving them a little bit more information, like I shared with you about the elections office conference call I had today. I just wanted to note that I will be able to provide Alex some more detailed numbers for you guys just to have either way.
Perfect. Thank you. That'll help a lot.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commander Turcotte.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Dahl, for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes care of that item. Department reports.
So our next item is Department Report number 15. The subject is American Rescue Plan Act update, and it will be given by the Administrative Services Department.
Welcome, Bill.
Good evening, there we go. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Bill Zanoni, the Interim Administrative Services Director. Let me start here. There we go. What I'd like to do this evening is kind of walk you through some information on the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. This is information that we presented an abbreviated version of this to the Finance Committee last month, but we'd like to give the council at least an introduction into this this funding and kind of where we are and where we think a direction we might begin to head. So just to start, as you're aware, the City Council adopted the budget for the next 2 fiscal years on April 22nd. And at the time the budget was adopted back in April, the exact amount of the funding was not known. There were estimates, but the exact amount was not known. The timing for the release of funds was not known, and most importantly, clear guidelines for the expenditure of those funds was not available at that time. The structure and funding limitations of our budget do, however, provide an opportunity for utilization of at least a portion of the ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act funds, and I'll kind of explain that as we go through this. So the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 was signed into law by the President on March 11th. Although the legislation was enacted in early March, well, let me go back. So it was implemented in March. That legislation provided a total of $1.2 trillion in fiscal recovery funds, with $350 billion of those dollars allocated to state and local governments. Of that $350 billion, $130 billion was allocated to cities throughout the United States. Cities with populations over $50,000, of over 50,000 people, of which we are one, are considered metro cities. And as a metro city, we are able to receive funding directly from the federal government. Cities with populations under $50,000 have to receive their funding it's funneled from the federal government to the state and then to the cities. So luckily, we're able to bypass that bureaucracy. The federal funding portal for this program was opened on Monday, May the 10th. We submitted our funding request that same afternoon. And because of that, we were one of the first agencies to receive funds. So our total allocation is $15,676,000. We received the first half of that, which is $7,838,000 on May 19th, and we'll receive the second half of the funding in May of next year. This is a little bit different than the FEMA emergency funding. With FEMA, you incur costs and then fight tooth and nail to get reimbursed. With this, they provide the money up front, we expend it, and then report out on what we've spent the money on. So the interim, although the legislation was signed into law in early March, the first guidance, or what they call their interim final rule, was not released until 2 months later on March 10th. So that 151-page document, which we actually distributed to the Finance Committee, and I've got a couple extra copies if anybody would like to read through it. But that 151-page interim document provides background information on the legislation. It identifies categories of eligible expenditures and then provides examples of expenditures that might be considered in each of those categories. Identifies reporting requirements going forward for managing these funds and reporting out on what they're being utilized for. And also in this document, at the time it was issued, the Treasury included 38 preliminary unanswered questions that they had for future clarification regarding uses of the funding. So although they issued this 151-page document, it's not a final product, and there are issues yet, questions to be answered and issues to be resolved. The Treasury provided a 60-day window between May 17th and July 16th for entities to provide feedback on this first set of guidelines, and they've indicated that a second, I don't know if it'll be 151 pages, but a second interim ruling will be issued later this summer. In the meantime, they have held several webinars, which we have attended. They've also released 3 sets of frequently asked questions and responses to those questions. The most recent one was issued on Tuesday of this week. So there's a lot of questions about this program, and there's a lot of information that's going back and forth, but it is definitely still a work in progress. So the overall overarching goal of the American Rescue Plan Act is to provide support to governmental agencies in responding to the negative impacts caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The guidelines stress that this is one-time funding, and it must be fully obligated by December 31st of 2014, with an additional 2 years beyond 2014 to spend any obligated funds. And this extension would really apply more for capital projects. If there was a capital project that was undertaken during this next 2.5 or 3.5 years through 2014 and it wasn't finished, it could you could finish spending the money during the following 2 years. But for any other one-time costs, for example, payroll costs, you have to spend the money by December 31st of 2014.
2024.
I'm sorry, 2024, yes.
Bill, one question?
Yes.
If I may. Does that apply to the full $15 million funding?
Yes.
Even though we don't get the other half until next year? It all has to be obligated by 2024?
That's correct. The entire amount has got to be obligated by the end of December of 2024. And any funds which are not obligated or expended within the next 3.5 years must be returned to the federal government.
I'm sure we can spend them.
So the eligible uses for this funding has been divided into 4 categories. We believe that the first 2 categories, which are premium pay for essential workers and investment in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure projects, are most likely the least applicable to Citrus Heights. And at least at this point in time, we're not recommending those for further consideration. So tonight, what I'd like to focus on is the 3rd and the 4th categories, which are responding to the public health emergency or its negative economic impacts. And the 4th category is providing government services, but only to the extent of the reduction in revenue due to COVID-19. Let me start with the third category, which is responding to the public health emergency or its negative economic impacts. The first portion of that, responding to the public health emergency, examples of, and these are just examples of costs, but examples of costs that might fall within this category of public health emergency would be COVID prevention mitigation costs such as vaccine programs, testing and contact tracing costs, behavioral health care needs, which might include mental health treatment, crisis intervention and services to promote access to social service programs. All of those situations have been exacerbated by what's gone on the past year. Behavioral, public health program costs such as providing support to vulnerable populations and access to public health services. And the other category that they've included under public health emergency costs is public safety, but they put the caveat in this, under this portion of this category, public safety, but only for work which is primarily dedicated to COVID-19 response. So that's the first portion of this third category. The second portion of this category is one which we believe is more applicable to our city, and that is the negative economic impacts of COVID-19. So eligible expenses under this portion of negative economic impacts would be things such as providing support to small businesses and nonprofits, which have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. This could be in the form of loans or grants to assist with reopening businesses or rebuilding, helping businesses rebuild from the recent economic downturn. Making investments in low-income housing and neighborhood services to address socioeconomic disparities. They use that term several times throughout this document. Or services for funding programs to address homeless issues. Those are all examples of costs that would fall within this negative economic impact category. The other item that's within this category is rebuilding public sector capacity, which within that category and within this document specifically identifies restoring government workforces up to pre-pandemic levels as an eligible cost. So that's the one, when we saw that one really piqued our attention. We believe that because of the hard work of the police department in navigating over the past 15 months with a significant reduction in staffing, that this section of the legislation provides the opportunity to use some of the federal relief funds to restore staffing in the police department to its January 2020 level, which has been a priority directed by the city manager. That could include filling 22 of the 28 positions which have been held vacant in the police department due to a lack of funding. The estimated cost of that is $2.5 million next fiscal year and $2.8 million in 22-23, or a total of $5.3 million in this next 2-year budget cycle. The fourth category of eligible expenditures is also the most difficult right now to calculate, but has the least amount of restrictions and the broadest latitude on allowable uses. And this category is using funds up to the extent of our revenue loss, going back to last year. So this category is fairly flexible, and it includes opportunities for funding government operating services. We can use these funds for capital project costs. They've specifically identified cybersecurity expenditures as an eligible expense, and police, fire, and other public safety costs. So this one is pretty much of the four categories. This is really the most flexible opportunity to spend numbers. That's the good news. The bad news, or the challenge with this one, as I indicated, this is the most flexible category. The calculation parameters right now are the least well-defined section in these guidelines. The Treasury has issued preliminary instructions on how to make this calculation, but there are many unanswered questions on which revenues should be included, which revenues we have to exclude from the calculation, and we're hoping that the U.S. Treasury is going to provide guidance on this within the next several months. This is something that all entities are struggling with right now. What they want us to do is start with fiscal year 18-19 revenues, and once we are clear on exactly what revenues we include, we're able to take that revenue amount and inflate it by 4.1% a year, and we do that for 18 months, and that brings us through December of 2020, which is our first calculation point. Compare that to and that is our anticipated revenue. We compare that to what our actual revenues were at that point in time, and the difference is the amount of our lost revenues, the first calculation of our lost revenues. They're requiring that we calculate this revenue loss as of 4 points in time. The first one is December of 2020, and then the end December of 21, 22, and 23. So we won't know the final amount of all of this available funding for the next 2.5 years. We should know the first calculation through December of 2020, hopefully within the next several months. And then every year when we get to the end of December, we'll do another calculation, and we'll be able to identify what amount would be eligible to spend under this category. So while the expenditure guidelines appear, at least at this point, to be fairly flexible, although not totally clear, there are certain specific costs which the Treasury has identified as not eligible for funding with these Rescue Act funds, and those include depositing funds into a pension fund to pay down an unfunded liability. So we're not able to take this money and move it up to PERS to pay down our pension liability, to rebuild depleted reserve funds, or to fund principal or interest costs on outstanding debt. So those are the main categories of what we cannot use this money for. The federal guidelines for utilization of the American Rescue Act funds stress the need for accountability, for transparency, and for engaging the community in developing plans for utilizing the federal relief funds for economic recovery and rebuilding. They've mentioned that several times through this document and in the subsequent documents that come out, is they really want to stress community engagement and input into this process. So our staff's recommendation for a proposed action plan to consider is to look at this really in 2 phases. We believe, because the guidelines appear clear, that restoring public safety staff is an eligible expense, and because sustaining and serving public safety is a key priority of the Citrus Heights community, and it's aligned with feedback that we received from the Finance Committee, Mayor Miller and Councilmember Bruins, when we went through this last month, staff's recommending that the first action to be considered would be allocating funding to restore public safety staffing, and that as phase 2 of this process would be an ongoing effort with expected final, or at least hopefully further, guideline clarification within the next several months, and then ongoing community engagement, sharing of information, and community input. So as far as next steps, our recommendation is that that the council, at your next meeting on June 24th, consider an amendment to the police department budget, which would restore staffing back to, at least back to what we had. They used January of 2020 as the date, so we looked at what staffing we had as of that point in time. Continue our community outreach efforts, continue to monitor information from the U.S. Treasury for program clarification, and probably most importantly, share information with other cities as far as what they're doing, what they're hearing, and possibly get ideas also as far as what they're looking at as far as opportunities to spend this money on. And just kind of to wrap up, the Treasury has established regular reporting requirements. They want quarterly reports from us on what these funds are being utilized for. The first report is due in August. And then every quarter going forward until the funds are fully expended. So our next steps would include complying with the reporting requirements, providing the City Council with updates as information becomes available, so that you're in the loop and you are kind of follow along and up to speed on information as we get it. And then finally, following Treasury's emphasis on public input, transparency, and accountability, carefully consider options for the best use of these funds. The federal government's allowed a period of 3.5 years or 5.5 years if you decide to use any of this money for capital. So it's important that we move forward in a very deliberate manner, making sure we follow all of the expenditure guidelines once that information is available, keeping in mind that this is one-time funding, and that any money that's spent on ineligible costs is going to have to be, we're going to have to find it somewhere and give it back. So that's kind of just a brief overview of what we know so far. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or take any comments.
Thank you, Bill. Questions from council?
Just a couple thoughts. So do we anticipate any the further revisions and clarifications from the federal government to be more incremental than what we've had so far? In other words, they're going to kind of fine tune it. No big changes or.
I don't think there will be any changes. I think it'll be fine tuning. I think they'll be more specific about specific ideas or examples of what can be used and what can't.
And then after our budget revise vote on the 24th, we feel pretty confident then we can just start moving forward with our priority, which presuming it all falls this way would be rebuilding our police department.
We would, assuming the council were to approve that action, then we would begin the recruitment process. There may be several positions that could be filled fairly quickly, but then it's a process.
It's an ongoing,
of recruiting and training, and that could well take through the end of this calendar year.
Right, thank you.
To go through that for that many positions.
So I just have a quick question. And
sure.
It might be part of a portion of the comment, and that is, it sounds like we can use this, some of this money to offer to some of the small businesses that have had to use up their savings instead of improving their parking lots and
correct,
that sort of thing. We could offer a grant program to them to encourage them to bring people to Citrus Heights.
What we have to do is just make the nexus that their need for the funding is as a result of
absolutely. I think there's
pandemic.
No lack of
certainly
business
isn't hard to
out
do,
there.
right?
There's plenty of businesses that have been devastated by the fact that they couldn't be open.
Yes.
And even the Sunrise Marketplace came to my mind because they spent so much money on just COVID activities. We're still open, masks, hand sanitizer, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, we've got to hear from the community, but those are the things that we need to be creative.
That's good news, Bill. Thank you.
Yeah, just very, very pleased to hear the priorities in public safety as where it should be. That's our main purpose. And so hopefully we can get that done quickly. I did see another new hire come on, and just so that process is moving, and very pleased to see that. And then I'll echo Councilmember Schaefer's remarks about the business community. They were the ones devastated. I mean, we can't hand checks to people, residents and stuff like that, who were devastated more than anything, but we can help the business community. And so hopefully we see our dollars go directly towards Citrus Heights businesses and then funneled again into the Citrus Heights community and economy. What I don't want to see is, and I do want community engagement, but I really hope we don't go into this area of bringing in consultants and stuff like that and paying somebody, $100,000 to tell us how to spend $100,000 and stuff. Sure. So I think we have very, very good staff that can get us there and tell us where our priorities are and where we should spend these funds. But very pleased to see we're moving, and thank you very much for a great report.
Certainly.
And I am thankful to you and staff for taking the time to dig through 151 pages. I got the link for it a couple weeks back, and I was just like, I'll wait. Because it's very intricate, and since it is one-time funding, we really do have to be careful of how we spend it, and that we're using it to put directly back into our economy, like my colleagues have said. But more importantly, we don't want to get dinged on the back end and then trying to figure out how we're going to dig ourselves out of a hole. So thank you for being so careful about this.
Jeannie?
I just wanted to acknowledge you, Bill, for jumping on this funding as quickly as you did, because that came out in our Finance Committee meeting here. We were one of the first cities in the nation to be funded because of your diligence, and I just can't thank you enough for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's very well put together. I'm always impressed and easy to understand. And one other thought I had is, we had our community center closed for a year and we lost fees because of COVID. So hopefully we can look at some recovery there too. But, everything's on the table. Let's hear from our residents. I don't think we need to pause on this whole police issue. We're all solid on that. So thank you. And we'll move forward. It's such a relief not have to go through these cuts. So thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, the next department report, please.
Next is Department Report 16. The subject is Fireworks Enforcement and Operations Plan, and it will be given by the Police Department.
Thank you, Mayor Miller. This item is in response to your request at the last council meeting that we respond back with what other jurisdictions are doing relative to fireworks and their ordinance, as well as potential concepts, high-level concepts of what potentially we could change in our ordinance to help curtail illegal fireworks. And I want to thank Commander Russo for his leadership in this area. He scrambled very quickly to reach out to Sac Metro Fire. I see our colleagues here in the meeting tonight. I want to thank them as well. Commander Russo did a lot of work on this presentation in short order, and I'll turn it over to him and thank him again for his fine leadership in this area, as well as operationally during the week of 4th of July. It's his staff and teams that will be out there along with Sac Metro Fire. So Commander Russo.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, Council, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council members. Jason Russo, I'm the Operations Commander for the Police Department. I'm going to briefly go over some of the operations that we have planned for the upcoming holiday, as well as go over some of the research that I did and the differences between our ordinance and other ordinances in the region. I will introduce my partners here shortly. We do have collaboration with the Fire Marshal and the Deputy Chief here on the line with us, and I'll let them introduce themselves a little later on this presentation. All right, to start off, we're going to have quite a bit of education that's already beginning. That's going to include a large media campaign using social media. We are coordinating with the county and our regional partners with joint media, brochures, and resources and web pages to introduce and try to educate the public on the dangers of fireworks, illegal fireworks, the laws behind them, and the different ordinances that are out there, depending on which jurisdiction they're in. We've also opened up and customized our crimes tip line to allow people to start leaving tips to us right now. If they start seeing fireworks that are illegal, aerial fireworks of any sort, we're going to start collecting that information so that during the holiday weekend, we will have identified some of those problem areas to add to our list. We look and we research the previous years, and we find geographically where we find different aerial fireworks from the past, and we focus on those areas on the weekend of. And then as we lead up to the 4th of July, we'll commonly find that they'll start them early. So by identifying those locations, we hopefully can catch some of the perpetrators in the act. We are doing a PSA or some video productions with fire. We're partnering with some other allied agencies to try to do some video presentations here shortly. And those are going to highlight on the safety of fireworks and the dangers behind them, and then also our zero tolerance and the enforcement plans that we'll have. Some of our strategies, like I mentioned, we're going to proactively gather intelligence leading up to the weekend, add that to our hot list of locations from previous and current year. We're going to be utilizing our drones, our UAS program again, and also Fire will be utilizing their drones as well to identify and try to triangulate on areas that are a little bit tougher to see when you're on the ground, but with that aerial view, we might be able to pinpoint locations. We are going to assign extra officers. We do have hundreds of calls that usually come in each year, and I'll give you some stats of the prior years of what we're looking at, but with the volume alone, even though we're putting extra officers out there, they're going to be very busy that night. We also are partnering with the Sac Metro arson investigator in the car, so we're doubling our footprint by putting them in the car both nights. They'll be with us on the 3rd and the 4th. And to give you that historical perspective, these are kind of the fireworks calls for service. You can see that, you know, we're fluctuating between 170, 195 calls given the last 3 years. Last year, even though it seemed like it was worse, every year it's very high, even though you saw a decrease maybe in calls for service across the board. We anticipate that it will be very similar this year, and we're hoping that we can convince some people that the dangers of fire are extremely high this year, and we just want to avoid any catastrophes. To cover some of the regional ordinances, there's really the main thing is we have safe and sane fireworks that are allowed in this county, and all the cities do provide small tweaks to their ordinance, but mainly there is a time frame when safe and sane fireworks are allowed to be purchased, bought, sold, and used, and it's during this time frame from the 28th to the 5th of July. The times vary city to city as far as the hours of operation for sale. One thing I did notice in our ordinance that it says that you can buy, use, and have these fireworks during these times, but it doesn't necessarily dictate what times you can use the fireworks. It just says during this month, during the 28th through the 5th. So if someone wants to light fireworks at 3 or 4 in the morning, our ordinance does not prohibit that. Some of the other ordinances I did research do have time of use, so that might be something of consideration. Also, the main difference is what some people refer to as a social host ordinance. And that means that if you are lighting fireworks and you happen to be associated with a property, you're the responsible party on a property, we actually would bill the individual on the property, because sometimes it's very difficult to identify and catch the person lighting the firework with the firework in hand. But with a social host ordinance, if we can identify that the fireworks were associated in possession or controlled or came from that property, a social host ordinance would allow us to then go after the property owner or the responsible party if they are a renter of that property. As always, possession of illegal fireworks or use of illegal fireworks is still a penal code, H&S code that you can use to enforce. But like I said, the difficulty with that section is catching him in the act, which is difficult to do. Typically, a person calls about fireworks. We get dispatched. On a busy night like that, we are going call to call to try to identify them. And the chances of us getting there while they're still lighting them can be slim. So catching them in the act can be difficult. And before I turn it over to the city attorney, I just want to welcome our partners here in collaboration. We have Deputy Chief Wagaman and Deputy Fire Marshal Fields here if they want to introduce themselves and bring their presentation forward.
Yeah, thank you, Commander Russo. This is Tyler Wagaman, Deputy Chief of Support Services with Metro Fire, your fire and EMS provider for the city of Citrus Heights. Glad to be here with you this evening. July 4th, as we approach, has been and will continue to be the busiest fire activity timeframe that we see year-round. When we look at our busiest time, it's typically about 6 o'clock in the evening on the 4th until 3 o'clock in the morning on July 5th. On average, we dispatch about 18 fires during the summertime within this time frame. However, on the 4th of July, this number increases to 267 fires. This is almost a 1,383% increase in fire activity, and it's almost solely related to fireworks activity. As with most agencies, we are challenged with staffing. We have one investigator who conducts cause and origin at significant fires throughout our jurisdiction. We have one person on each day, and they also follow up on criminal activity. So on the 4th of July, it's a challenge to get our investigators out on the street. So what we've done this year is really thought outside of the box and utilized some program money that couldn't be spent just due to some COVID reasons, and we moved that over to our community risk reduction group, and we trained our fire inspectors how to conduct cause and origin so they can actually respond to calls on the 4th of July, meet up with our firefighters and conduct that investigation. And that will allow our fire investigators to be freed up to solely focus on enforcement for both illegal fireworks as well as educating folks on the proper use of safe and sane fireworks. So that is a little bit newer concept this year. Because of that, we will have 3 investigators out on the street, and we'll also be launching a new pilot program this year as well, pulling one of our firefighters with over 14 years of law enforcement experience. We just got him all trained up on the cause and origin, side of the house. So he was going to be joining the team up as well. So we'll have a total of 4 investigators out on the street, the highest number that we've ever had before. So looking at our enforcement plan, on July 3rd, we're going to have 6 inspectors out conducting origin and cause. We'll have 2 inspectors just solely designated to public displays, and we'll have 4 fire investigators. Then on July 4th, we will have 9 inspectors doing the cause and origin throughout the city and the county, as well as our 4 fire investigators. One of these investigators each day will be assigned to the city of Citrus Heights, working in conjunction with your police department. Also, another area of focus is buy bus. So starting in May and early June, our investigators started to search social media and some other sites for folks that are illegally selling fireworks. And so far this year, we have actually caught 2 folks trying to sell fireworks, which has resulted in 2 felony charges and over 100 pounds of illegal fireworks taken off of our streets. And based on some statistics, I would anticipate a few more arrests and hopefully some more illegal fireworks taken off the street between now and July 4th. So with that, I would like to go ahead and pass it over to our Deputy Fire Marshal, Quishana Fields, and she's going to provide some additional information on what your fire inspectors are going to be doing on the 3rd and 4th of July.
Thank you, Deputy Chief.
Thank you, Chief Wagaman and Commander Russo. Good evening, council members. Just a quick overview of what we'll be doing proactively in regards to fireworks this year. As Commander Russo mentioned, the sale of Safe and Sane fireworks begins at 12 p.m. on June the 28th through 10 p.m. the evening of July the 5th. Each of the stands or booths for fireworks sales are inspected by one of our fire inspectors prior to opening. Those inspectors are out there taking a look at those stands to make sure that the fireworks that they're selling are approved by the California State Fire Marshal, that those stands are free of combustibles, free of vegetation, and free of electrical or vehicle hazards. As of now, we anticipate about 160 fireworks stands within our service area this year, 22 of those being within the city of Citrus Heights. In addition to inspecting the stands, our fire inspectors, as Chief Wagaman mentioned, will be present at all of our public fireworks displays. We anticipate 4 of those this year, 2 on the 3rd, and then 2 additional shows on the 4th. The inspectors are there to ensure the safety of the fireworks arrangement, as well as the safety of the spectator viewing areas. To add to our inspection efforts, as Commander Russo had also mentioned, we are providing outreach and education to the community on which fireworks are legal for use, as well as the safe handling and disposal of the Safe and Sane fireworks. You will see that through the PSAs, as he mentioned, on our social medias, informational flyers that we are providing at the point of sale, at the fireworks stands, and then the media press releases that we are putting out with our law enforcement partners. So that's just a quick synopsis of the education and outreach and inspection that we're doing this year for fireworks, and then I'll turn it back over to Chief Wagaman.
Thank you, Deputy Fire Marshal. Lastly, anytime that we have a significant incident at Metro Fire, whether it's a fire, a significant car accident, or launching of a new program, one thing that we like to do is to conduct a post-incident analysis. And no better time than now, at the completion of July 4th, with the launching of a new program, we're going to sit down and conduct an AAR. We're going to look at the total calls for service, the amount of public contacts during that service, the amount of pounds of illegal fireworks taken from the street, the total fire investigations and their causes, the total number of civilians injured during that time frame, and last but not least, and I think the most important, is discuss and memorialize the future needs, the successes, and the areas of growth so we can do it just a little bit better next year. So we appreciate the continual effort and partnership with the Citrus Heights Police Department. And I certainly look forward to this partnership into the future. Thank you. End of report.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Wagaman. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And then we'll turn it over to City Attorney Ryan Jones.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, Mayor, members of the council, I wanted to highlight a couple large options or from a high scale what the options are for ordinance amendment. First off, you could continue to go with the ordinance as it is. In Chapter 38, Article 3, it does spell out what our rules are with regard to fireworks, and that is that they must be safe and sane fireworks, that the licensees must get a license from the city, and that they are licensees that are from tax exempt groups and organizations. The other option, one of the other main options would be what Commander Russo had highlighted before, and that is to consider adopting a social host ordinance, which is something the cities of Folsom and Sacramento have done. And that is, as Commander Russo had talked about, the idea that enforcement can be based on the location where the firework is launched or being used. Whereas before in our current ordinance, the only way to potentially cite somebody is to see it actually be lit or leave the hand of an individual, which is very difficult to enforce. So if that's something the council is interested in doing, we'd like to hear that. We then could come back with an ordinance and draft that for your potential approval. The other, more extreme option is to ban fireworks. That is something that unincorporated areas of Placer County and El Dorado County, just to name a few, have currently implemented. So those are your broad options. Want to present those to the council, and we're interested to hear what your direction and deliberation is. And this concludes our presentation tonight. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Commander. Jeannie?
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for the new information to me about the, what did you call it? The social?
Social host.
The social
Yeah,
host.
yeah.
I think that is a really important addition that we could make to our fireworks ordinance, and I would really support that. And knowing how ordinances go, is there any way we could do that as an emergency ordinance so we could actually implement that this year and then follow up with a more permanent ordinance? Because it usually takes, two
different
meetings to
meetings.
get an ordinance in place. I'd like to recommend and suggest to the council that we agendize this for our next council meeting as an emergency ordinance, so that we could implement that for the 4th of July this year.
I'd second that.
I think we've got a second. I've seen a hidden third. Yeah, that's what it
Absolutely.
takes.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you to our police department and our fire department. It's an impossible task, I think, to keep up with it every year. And as I've heard comments made by many people, it seems to get worse every year, even though our statistics might show a little bit of a dip. I think the incidences are out there. Scares me, trees and rooftops, so.
I have a couple of questions for the city attorney. So when it comes to illegal fireworks and we happen to catch someone who has multiple pounds, like I think it was the fire marshal, not the fire marshal, but the chief mentioned that they caught someone with 100 pounds. What kind of fine can we assess? Are we limited to a particular, dollar amount? Can we assess a fine based on the quantity that they have? I really want to make this painful for people that are purchasing and distributing illegal fireworks. So what guidance can you offer there?
Sure, yeah. We can set the fine based on what you want it to be, but typically municipal code violation is a misdemeanor, up to $1,000 fine for an incident, which, that's pretty hefty. If somebody is, no kidding, doing something to that extent and that heavy where you've got pounds and pounds, we potentially could do a report and turn that over to the district attorney for violations of other state and penal codes.
At what level would it become a felony?
That's a good question. I don't know offhand.
I'm with you, Tim.
Yeah, I believe our ordinance in particular talks about the violation being under 25 pounds. So something over that, we'd definitely be looking at a higher H&S code or not a municipal code.
You cannot charge a felony under the municipal code. Those are limited to misdemeanors or infractions.
So the maximum is $1,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Do we want to also entertain a limit on what time in the evening?
Oh,
I would
I
like-
like
That goes
that.
without
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
I would like maybe even 11 PM. I don't know how everybody else feels, but if you're not done by 11 PM, I don't understand what you waited for.
Well, my mom always said nothing good happened after midnight. So,
I support the 11 PM cutoff.
Well, fireworks don't really start till about 9:30 because of the light, the darkness issue, but I'm with you. I mean, even if you have a block party, it doesn't take more than an hour and a half to shoot off all the fireworks that you have. I don't know, somewhere, I could support either 11 or midnight.
yeah, either one I could
Yeah,
too.
either one.
The reason I wanted to go with 11 is because it's the 4th, and a lot of times people are going to work on the 5th.
Yeah, they're,
And you're trying to get to sleep, and, you wanted to, let everybody do their thing, but it's time to go to bed, and you got to get up in the morning, and things are still blowing up.
Yeah.
And, it's not always a weekend.
yeah, and then we'd have to have the other time with like 8 AM, 11 to 8 AM.
So add that
Mr.
to the emergency ordinance as well? Is that your recommendation,
Yeah,
Brad?
might as well. Throw it in the salad.
I support that 100%.
Okay. What are your thoughts?
I agree. My concern has always been about our veterans and our pets, and we have a lot of veterans in our community, some of which who experience PTSD, so the 4th
Yeah.
of July is very difficult. And I don't have any pets, but my neighbors do, and it's always a difficult time for them dealing with the fireworks being, kind of excessive. So this is a good solution.
Yeah, I like this.
Good point. And then I just wanted to mention the more draconian would be to ban Safe and Sane and just make no fireworks, but I think that would take a regional approach. We couldn't just do it as a city.
I think we take this a step at a time.
Yes, exactly.
Before
I
we
just wanted
cut
to
off the-
mention it.
Yeah.
And what it would take, because you'd need something like a shot tracker to really enforce it, and that's expensive.
So I
know-
did, there in this year, 21 booths going on, supporting 19, including our own police, I'm sorry, it's an organization.
The PAL, yeah.
Is it PAL?
No, it's not PAL.
Oh, it isn't?
No, it's
We
a
don't do it.
Police
We
Officers
don't do it.
Association, I think.
Oh, okay.
But I certainly wouldn't want to deprive those folks of being able to raise, that's well over $100,000.
It's a big chunk every
Yeah,
year
it
for their
is. So I certainly
nonprofits.
wouldn't want to deprive those folks of earning some money. And it's hard-earned money. It's not easy to go out and sell on the 4th of July.
And a thought that I've had every year, I think about this, and I had this conversation today with one of our citizens. In order for us as a state to be effective in curbing illegal fireworks, I think we have to have a state mandate. And it might sound crazy, but, we've got at every entrance in the state of California from other adjoining states, we've got these inspection areas where your car has to be inspected for fruit. I think it should be inspected for illegal fireworks. I think that's much more dangerous than the fruit fly that hasn't been around for decades. So, and stop it at the border, and that would, I think, take care of a lot of it. But that is not within our jurisdiction, but that's my thought on it.
Okay.
Mayor Miller?
Yes.
If I might suggest that Commander Russo work with the City Attorney Jones and on this emergency ordinance by looking at other agencies and their timeframes so that we stay somewhat consistent within the county or region. So if other jurisdictions like Folsom or Rancho Cordova have already set timeframes, it would be better if we stay somewhat consistent just for educational purposes. So perhaps we come back with a proposed emergency ordinance next council meeting.
Thank you, Chief. That's a good idea. Because if someone in Orangevale is firing them off, they could be calling our police
Right.
department to respond, and it's a different time for them or
Well,
something.
that's county.
Yeah. And we wouldn't respond, but. Commander Russo, thank you so much for doing this in short order. We really appreciate it. I know it comes up every year, and it's just a big frustration for everybody. Commander Wagaman, thank you, and please tell your crews thank you from this Citrus Heights City Council. We really appreciate everything you do, and I know it's a wild evening. I couldn't believe 267 fires, and that's just in Citrus Heights, I assume, and that's just a staggering number. I don't know how many of those were palm trees, but that could happen. And so with that, we look forward to seeing what you come up with, Ryan. And I forgot to thank you for your report. And Jason, thank you.
The next item is city manager items.
Yes, Council, briefly. So with regards to really the pandemic and this overarching narrative from the governor about, opening California, staff follows this daily and weekly, and there's a number of moving parts. There's the overarching narrative, but there is many sub-narratives as well that go along with this, and really in a couple of different categories. First of all, the City Hall and the Police Department have now to walk-in customers for a couple of months. And we've been able to serve, as you know, and as we have reported really all year virtually, but we did open the walk-in component as well. We have very few customers as a result of that. I know there's been conversation about opening up, council meetings. Obviously, the council's present there now and has been recently. Then there's the question of, bringing in, really an audience into the council chambers. And so we're studying this, for guidance. Ultimately, I think it'll be the council's decision, but like most things, it is not entirely clear. We are been studying the issue of when we can open up the community center and in what capacity. Staff is having a meeting tomorrow on this issue. There does seem to be some guidance on that, but not as much clarity on the issue around public meetings. I do know that the governor just recently extended the ability for public boards to be able to continue to operate virtually. So by virtue of that action, he seems to be encouraging that. However, to what degree that's, regulation, we're not exactly sure. I think you can, bring members of the audience into the chambers, but we need to understand what's going to be required in terms of safety measures. The employee and employer category is separate and different. That's regulated by OSHA, and the OSHA board has met recently, and they do not have specific guidelines that we can work from yet. They have another meeting scheduled, and that's different for us because as an employer, they can and have levy fines and even shut workplaces down if you don't follow their regulations. All liability and burden of COVID is placed on the employer. And so our human resources staff has spent a lot of time and still does currently adjusting and writing mandatory policies as dictated from OSHA. So the employee side is different. So, my hope is, and I hear from the council the urgency to want to meet and bring in the public. We agree. So we're hoping that we can get you some guidance this next week prior to the next meeting that the council can consider. So at least what your options are, or just make the decisions on your own as a body on how you'd like to do it. So as usual, there's a lack of clarity, And to the degree, though, what falls under regulation, what falls under suggested guidelines, we'll tell you this next week what we have and what we know. I can talk with each one of you, and based on that, we can move forward, perhaps even into the next meeting, which is what I'm hearing you would like to do. So that's really where we are. We'll have a little more information tomorrow. We have some staff meetings again about this to review some current information that seems to be coming out right now. So, and if I could ask, and I am hearing, from the council that particularly bringing in audience members or community members into the meeting is desired. Is that what am I understanding that right?
Yeah, I'm seeing nodding heads. But on the same token, I think we can keep our employees safe, and still do Zoom or whatever it's called, to dial them into the meeting. If
Yes,
OSHA's an issue, yeah.
Sure. We're set up, just like we are right now, seamlessly to do that. So our focus will be to get the council the best understanding for your consideration for council meetings specifically.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions for the city manager?
No, but just a comment or a suggestion, that is, when we get to the point of bringing the public back in, one of the safety measures we could take would be to do a temperature check before they actually enter the council chambers. I've been subjected to that in public meetings.
I just went to Kaiser. They're not checking temperature anymore.
Well, I was at a,
So I don't know.
where was I yesterday? I was at a public meeting yesterday, and I got my forehead temperature checked before I was allowed to enter. So.
Okay, we'll look into that. Let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, please.
And our last item is items requested by council members and future agenda items.
Anybody? With no items, we are adjourned.
Long meeting,